And like one of the first things the guy does is he controls it, but he renounces ownership. He goes, oh, I'm passing it off to some sham director. And he goes, I don't have anything to do. I don't know.
And in the FTX case, how much of it was getting celebrities to endorse the platform?
It's huge. This is what I wanted to say. Like, the more I study, you can't do that and then say, oops, I played a little too much of my video games and lost billions of dollars. Like, this doesn't fly.
Well, he wasn't saying that I played the video games and that's why I lost the money.
But from the, the arms of one huckster to another. Like, it's just like it's almost to something worse. They're located out in the Bahamas, which is a great place to put your...
Why do they do it in the Bahamas?
Because it's unregulated. So the problem with doing stuff in the United States or system to where they could see you, Joe, deposit a Bitcoin on FTX, they could grab that Bitcoin and start trading with it immediately.
Whoa.
Even though they were never supposed to be able to get a person in the space to where people thought, okay, well, if he's saying it, he's a guy who only says positive things about crypto because he's a crypto executive. So if he's saying there might be problems, there's probably some problems.
But
what they wanted to store some Bitcoin with Tom Brady. They wanted to be alongside Tom Brady. So he's like, there was fungibility between wallets, money system. Especially in our modern age, it seems like you can understand where they're coming from, the average person. A lot of people found out about crypto the same time the mainstream media, everyone else did. So by the time they're actually investing,
it's too late.
It's too late. I think the most fair case you could make about this thing. So all this money's going in, and then you basically wait. And as you're waiting, Ethereum's going out everywhere. A bunch of people are withdrawing, right? Because they're also taking their money out.
Right.
By the time something, because I was just like, why does this make some people tens of millions of dollars and nothing happens? Why? And it just was kind of, I was just trying to find my way. I was just trying to even before that, I had done a show where I was trying to break down these topics. I was some reactions, but not much. What I noticed is it resonated with people beyond the views, if that makes sense. I was just there was something different about the reaction to it. And Vic, because every day it's getting less valuable. So the question is, what do you do if you're in that country making money? If you want, it wasn't like he was some random fly-by-night guy. He was well respected in the Wall Street space. People thought he might take over the SEC after the current person had stepped down. They thought he was going to take it over.
Wow.
These exchanges where it was worth more. So he was arbitraging this difference in prices. And then after he made his money that way, he not actually this incredible business that you thought it was, that you're going to get rich easily. So don't do that. Go do crypto. You got to get into crypto now. And then it became
each other on amphetamines and making billions of dollars. It sounds like a great story if it wasn't illegitimate.
Yeah, ultimately that's the problem. Sam was just hopped up on pilfering FTX, the customer deposits, and was using it in Alameda Research, which was his trading firm, to try to make extra money, and he lost it.
And so this is all because it's on...
Find out, there were just no adults in that room, and the few adults that there were they had a criminal lawyer. Anyway, I don't think he's actually been convicted of anything. I shouldn't say that. They had this guy, Dan, fringed that money for some type of crypto token. There's a lot of different tokens out there. And
explain tokens, because I don't understand tokens. I know there's crypto and there's tokens. What is the difference between the two? It wasn't a scam. I've said this before because I root for nerds to be that successful, that you just completely living outside the norms of society, just fucking
service that said, you cannot move, when I deposit with you, you're not going to touch my money. And I said, Sam, if that's true, where's the money of all these people? And it's sort of what's left after the guy who kind of was spearheading this bill was a fraud. It's kind of tough. I was actually randomly it's this guy who drives a Toyota. So you go well, why does he need to scam me if he's driving a Toyota, right? Then it's which Sam Bankman-Fried did. Then it's okay, ultimately going to find out what we're doing here.
How many more of these are out there in the world?
As big as FTX, give you this yield. He starts explaining this thing that sounds exactly like a Ponzi scheme. And so ultimately, Matt Levine's like, yeah, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. But again, it stopped short. Found out how to be successful. And if you invest with me, I'll save you time. You know, you could do it yourself, Joe. You could do it. But what? It's going to take you 5 years. Get with me, and I'm going to shortcut your. So they were paying everybody to promote this FTX crypto exchange. And the idea is this is the next big thing, right? And this is where you're going to make money. Then he comes up, prep school. He's kind of like built for success, right? He goes to MIT, goes to Jane Street as this quantitative trader.
Easier or more profitable for him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would he do that?
I'm not as familiar with the regulation side of things. People were talking about that a lot. Coinbase, it seems like they're, legitimate, but so much of the problem with crypto is we don't know how much of this stuff is money laundering. We don't know how much of this stuff is like executives Ryan Salami or something. I think that's his last name. Salami. I don't know. I just don't know how to pronounce it. But he was like, the number 3 donor to the Republican Party. But it was all orchestrated through Sam.
Down because it seems like they received additional scrutiny, right? Because now people are starting to look at it, and I saw that their value went down considerably.
Yeah, he's one of the leaders at the NASDAQ. I mean, he was one of the go-to guys, and so you thought, well, I invest with Bernie, like I can't lose. It's like almost, betting on the house. You can know their assets. So it's like a big thing recently in crypto. They'll say, hey, we're going to show you proof of reserves. What does that mean? They mean we'll show you on-chain all our... They're like, look, I've been screwed by the banks. Every time the government's printing a bunch of money, where do I go? Right? You can understand the appeal, but it's just like you win. EX said in their terms of service. So one of the really big problems was they actually weren't doing that, but nobody knew because nobody had to look at their books. Like it was very opaque.
Crypto.
Ransomware. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%. Because before it was like, okay, you need to use like Western Union or sort of one of these places where you can kind of send money without too much screw. Touch your money, obviously. That was the whole point. It's like you deposit with us, we're not going to do anything with your money. It's your money. It's like a deposit. Like it's almost like a bank. Like you deposit with a bank. Your bank isn't supposed to go ahead and take your money.
How does a guy like that not wind up getting indicted?
I ask myself that every day. There's so many.
Is it a matter of time, or is it he's
Washington? And I think there was like a tweet from Sam saying like, "Oh, like I'll see you the next time you're in Washington" or something like that. But like, it was kind of a dig because he knows CZ can't go to Washington. Like he would be. Nobody knew what was going on behind the scenes. So even though they said like, "We're not going to touch your money," as soon as you deposited Bitcoin, I mean, I talked to some of the insiders at Alameda. They said they had this backdoor crypto keys all the time. I mean, it's kind of an interesting idea where you go, I'm going to get in before everyone else. But a lot's what ultimately matters is how much do you have on deposits that you owe out? And so with Binance, we don't really know. The only one we have a little bit more of a look into is your hands in both pockets. But publicly, he's just like, he's donating to Democrats because he says, oh, I'm like this, like, I care about all these issues.
Yeah.
But it's like even more cynical than just buying one party outright, the proceeds of criminals. I mean, we know that these criminals do launder their money through a lot of these crypto exchanges, through mixers. It's just sort of somebody found out about this God mode. And so the lawyer's like, how do we basically cover this up? Dan Friedberg's like, how do we, what do you want me to do? And he's like, hey, you put $100,000 into this little mixer, and then it sends $100,000 out later, and nobody knows where that money came from.
What is a mixer? How does it work?
It's interesting. So the most famous example is Tornado Cat. Everything. I don't have access to the book. Like I basically knew nothing. So anytime you'd call him out on an issue, you'd say, where's the money? He goes, well, I don't know. It's gone. It's Alameda Research. Ask Alameda. You're like, it's this magic internet money.
Magic.
How do you get some of that? How do you get some of that magic internet money? Well, you have to go somewhere to buy it. And so it's a crypto exchange is where you kind of go. You put your fiat. Success. 2 months. You're going to be making 5 figures a month. 10 months, maybe 6 figures a month. And I've done it for people before. That's the social proof. I've shown people how to do this. And so now it's trying to be sorted out by the guy who literally unraveled Enron. And he says, this lawyer goes, it's worse than Enron.
Initially, he thought he was going to be able to figure out a way to pull all the company's assets together and
I think he
make
thought
everybody sound and repay everyone. And
annoying. So
we don't need that.
The famous example is like Coinbase is in America, and they have to file all these forms. They're a regulated entity. They're publicly traded. So we were warning people, hey, this is probably insolvent. Get your money out. But CZ ultimately was the big, he was the most notorious and well-respected. You it's kind of too good to be true, but the social proof is overwhelming, and it overwhelms your kind of alarm bells. So the social proof is a combination of things. So first of all, it's like
on and a lot of ums and ahs, and you just kept on him. It was amazing that he felt like he could
said, well, hey, can we restructure all this money that went through me like a loan so that we can, say that I took a loan out and I was donating so we didn't violate any laws. They never ended up doing that on Coinbase or something like that.
Right.
So FTX launches. Let's start with who Sam Bankman-Fried is. He's kind of at the center of all of this. Sam Bankman-Fried is this guy he's the son of two Harvard lawyers, but I'm from the Bahamas and I'm American, so that might be fine. I mean, everyone's always interested in the regulations benefiting them. The challenge now, though, is, a lot of people had right people in charge who are going to take the fall. You resign, and then you blame it on them later when everything goes wrong. His problem, though, is Caroline Ellison flipped on him.
So she definitely flipped on him.
She was smart. Yeah. She cooperated. That her and I believe Gary Wang were big executives. They're cooperating. They pled guilty. They're cooperating with the feds. I mean, they did this, or you were a grandma who just put one Bitcoin on there, or, more likely the grandson. He treated all the accounts the same. So when everyone came running for the money, they just withdrew until nothing was. Launches FTX in 2019. And that's a crypto platform where, honestly, you can make a lot more money than just with a trading firm. So FTX quickly skyrockets in popularity through these trades that are profitable in crypto. So the way he first made his money was he did something where he bought Bitcoin in the U.S. and then he sold it on these Japanese.
What is it's a crypto exchange, right? So how does that work?
So the first question is when you learn about crypto, it means playing League of Legends while on investor calls. Like at the time, that was seen as this charming, genius thing.
On calls.
You could hear even lack of regulation and the ability to send peer to peer, which means you and I can just send money to each other directly, no middleman. There's also a really huge opportunity for fraud, scams, act that bill, and now that it was all a fraud, or the guy who basically pushed it was a fraud, now they're trying to retool it, and that's ultimately what he was doing. But it also looks like he was donating through some of his executives. And I mean, the whole thing was shady all the way down. The person's not named in the report who was donating to Democrats. We know the one donating to Republicans was Ryan Salami. But that person eventually...
Party.
That's right, but...
Also to the Republicans.
This is what's wild. So
yeah.
Sam knew publicly in our current American climate, what I know is everyone's always interested in pulling up the ladder after them and building the kind of the rule book around hey, if you're from this certain jurisdiction that we're a part of, you're fine. If you're not, he lost it on the platform. He says the 18 million was on FTX or whatever, and he never got $1 out of it. But that was what the deal was for. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's people get away with it. It's just there's too many people doing it. And you'll catch some people, but ultimately a lot of people will just basically skate by, even though by all rights they should have been. Senator's office reached out to me. They're like, what do you think about this? And I was like, I don't know, man. You guys have to – this is y'all's thing to figure out. Ultimately, y'all –
bizarre that so many people got duped. And I felt the same way about Bernie Madoff. I'm not a financially aware person. I'm not into the market. I don't follow these things.
They tracked his account. He's playing League while on calls about the failure of FTX.
Wow.
Just imagine the arrogance.
Is that arrogance?
I'll have to my feeling is offshore entities should not be they're not subject to our rules. How can you allow offshore I don't know. He blamed all the wrongdoing of FTX on Alameda Research. And he said, I don't control Alameda Research. Even though he was the owner, he's no longer God mode. on Ultimate Bet where the CEO could see everybody's hands and play on the site, seeing everybody's hands. So by the third interview, I'd studied him and I said, okay, how do we get down to FTX's responsibility in this whole thing? And I kept coming back to, it was the terms of, I'm a millionaire by the time I'm 23 years old. Just buy my course. My course is, $2,000. Pay me $2,000. I'll teach you to get rich quick. So not having sort of like, it's maybe not big enough. They're good people, a lot of the people going after these guys, but it's like trying to catch everyone who's speeding. 5 minutes or 3 minutes. So I don't want to give off the idea that like there's nothing here. But the problem is that with tokens like is the individual, you can think of currency, right? So it's like the individual. So Bitcoin is, you have Bitcoin, then you have, it's one of the cryptocurrencies. You have Ethereum assets. You can check yourself. Like I have $1 billion in USDC. Well, that's great. But it doesn't matter if I have $1 billion in crypto, Bitcoin, whatever, if I owe $2 billion.
Right.
That stuff went down, and a report comes out from CoinDesk where it shows FTX's balance sheet. It shows actually what tokens they have. For one of the first times, it was kind of
involved in what you do.
It's a weird thing.
So when did you start your YouTube channel?
So I started it a few years ago, 2018, 2019.
People that were standing out and saying none of this makes sense.
Right.
And who were those people?
So there were a few people. There was, like, the house always wins, right? So when FTX was taking off, it just seemed like everyone who was someone was backing him. So then it was okay. And then I think a lot of these people deferred to their other friends. They're all saying it's okay. Let me put money in. And it's just a huge case study that just because other people.
Jamie's looking it up.
I thought I knew it off the top of my head, and now I don't want to say the wrong one. A16Z.
A16. Your issue is that anytime there's demand for withdrawals, you're going to encounter problems. So it was going to be inevitable anytime any store, makes something work. If it's going to go to the public, you have to solve all these issues. And unfortunately, we saw crypto kind of go mainstream before they had. I'm this guy who's going to maximize good in the world. And that was his reason for working all the time. I mean, that's the justification to be hopped up on amphetamines. It's like maximize productivity, maximize human happiness. Hey, just make this problem go away. This is the CEO. Like, go blame it on somebody else. Go blame it on some, third party that got access to our website. Say it was like a glitch or something. And so that is stuff. And you start to have repeat occurrences. Like, I just cover stuff all the time, and you see echoes of the same thing. I just had somebody just a couple of days ago, I was interviewing for this news scheme we're looking at, and he said, I have ads, like get rich quick schemes. Like, you've got a bunch of people, flexing in their Lamborghinis, telling you, they're like 25 years old, telling you want to get rich by 25 or 22. I'll show you. I made $1 million. So he decides to donate dark to a Republican, to Republicans. And part of the accusation is he knowingly did this through one of his shocking thing. And I think that shows, if you're running a shady empire, who's better than a shady lawyer to try to help you cover it up, right?
How did you get in
LGBTQ plus causes? And it was through a guy, and the guy was like, I feel a little uncomfortable with this. And they said, well, we don't have anyone trustworthy at FTX we can donate through who's rich. Like, you have $1, I'll let you trade with $100. And that's going to be one reason you come to my offshore exchange. I can offer you more leverage than the guys who are abilities. It's hard to know. So people really just take you at face value, and they have to trust that other people are invested, so I guess I'll jump in too.
And that's do something like that. Why would he publicly communicate?
This is why it's so interesting to me to look at fraud. This is why it fascinates me, as well as I think it's an important thing. And why is so much of your balance sheet made up of your own tokens? It's a big question. So one of the things that FTX had done, and a lot of companies were doing at the time, very treatable kind of cancer, and she's fine. But at the time, I watched her as she's gets this diagnosis, gets swept up with all these hucksters who are telling her that the way to treat thyroid cancer. But the problem is, The exact moment FTX can't pay you back is the exact moment that FTT becomes worthless. So you think you have all this collateral, this big mess right now, and we're waiting for regulators to figure it out. Finally, regulators have stepped on the scene, but right now it's just this kind of wild, wild west. I'm blanking on the name right now. But
A1Z? What is that?
No. I'm sorry. I'm blanking on. It's this famous. I'm going to remember it right after I get out of here. It's one of the famous. He's a shark. He knows what he's doing.
What was the conflict between the two of them that led him to do that?
The conflict was. It's a great question. The conflict was ultimately that Sam was trying to get some regulations passed, and he lateral like dollars or like some asset will give you FTT tokens, which is their own invented coin, and that should have value if anything goes wrong. And people were accepting that as value. But what are you saying in the terms of service that means that I can't sue you? You have all these terms of service that basically say none of what I'm saying is true. Like they say they can get you rich in the sales pitch, and then there were things that were coming out like questions about okay, they say they have all this money. Where on chain is it? So like the blockchain, everything's publicly, you can see it. Basically screaming about all these scammers online, and unlike my previous work, which kind of had resonated, like it had gotten.
What was the first video?
I started as sort of like an interview show, nothing about scams. I had a channel before it. So victims would reach out to me. They'd be like, "Hey, I'd been scammed by this guy, and I didn't realize what was going on. And you showed me, sort of like how the whole scheme worked." That's the issue. Was FTX's problem was not CZ. Ultimately, he's kind of the guy who like pushed over the house made. His whole thing was he did this thing with Ultimate Bet. So he was one of the lawyers. So there's this poker site called Ultimate Bet, and he got caught in this scandal where they had enabled this thing called
regulated. Like if he was doing this, like Coinbase can't do this. Is that correct?
Yeah, Coinbase is much more heavily scrutinized. They actually have to file with the SEC. Everyone loses confidence. Everyone sells their FTT tokens. No one wants to buy it. It's worth nothing.
So how did this all fall apart?
Great question. So what he said in one of the interviews, he goes, "No one believes me when I said I donated dark because no one believes anyone would be like, everyone wants the credit for donating. No one believes that I just do it on the sly." Is not surgery. You can just treat it naturally. Just don't worry about, hey, don't listen to the doctors. Don't listen to your general practitioner. You can just treat it with like colloidal silver, like investment funds. They invested in a bunch of NFT projects. Mark Andreessen, I think, is the guy who runs it. The son of Harvard lawyers. We just sort of can't lose. And nobody paid attention to some of the red flags that were going on until ultimately it was too late. It turns out he was pilly. Sam goes, "Oh, you won like our battle." And people were like, is it a battle when you lose billions of dollars of customer roll? You think you have this backstop because on the books it's worth, X dollars. Let's say it's like worth $5 a coin. But what you're not realizing is the real risk is when FTX can't pay you back, they probably can't pay anyone back. There was a lot of fear of missing out or FOMO in the markets at the time. Everyone thought, oh, cryptos, you have to get in now, right? Because if you get in now, FTT tokens and pay everybody out.
Oh, that's what he thought? He's on amphetamines, right? So he can't be thinking totally clearly.
They're setting it up with like, I used to be broke like you. Well, that's a strategy. A lot of these guys were never broke, right? It's just part of the story you have to tell to be really effective. It's like, I lied my way into it. I can sort of lie my way out of it. And this is what he did. So prior to this, I'd interviewed him twice before, and I had kind of gotten hamstrung with he's just so good at dodging stuff. Never understood how Bernie Madoff got people because it seems so preposterous. And then I fell for something very similar. And what I noticed with all of these things, the thread is
Binance hasn't had similar problems.
No, they've had a few runs and they've covered withdrawals. I mean, so it's just the problem is a lot of it's a black box around, right? Kevin O'Leary's in, so you kind of think you're swimming safely with like other savvy investors, and that's what ultimately gets you to buy in. Bernie Madoff is very similar. I mean, he was really well regarded in Wall Street. So when people invested with him, they knew the returns were insane, But
did you interview him before the scandal?
No, not before the scandal.
So it's like as it was going down.
As it was going down, he goes on all these Twitter Spaces. He doesn't want to. He's doing interviews with that. You have Dogecoin. You have SafeMoon. You have FTT, which is what FTX was using as their native token. So a lot of these guys, you'll start a crypto exchange.
I watched the new CEO, talk about it.
Yeah.
About him trying
that's John Ray.
Yeah. Trying to unravel it. And it's amazing.
I saw all this, and my experiences up to that point, it kind of led me to I want to say something. But why is nobody saying anything? It just seemed like there was this, these people pitching this stuff, and nobody was talking about it. So I made this random video, just fine. And then FTX US went bankrupt, and he's the one who put it into bankruptcy. And then he's telling everyone, oh, no, the money's actually still there. I mean, he was constantly giving a conflicting narrative what that was to hide it from people who were trying to take a look at his books. But it's just, that's what I mean by black box. You never know what games these guys are playing. Like they say, oh, here's sort of like the rough estimate of our balance. Where's the money? I don't know. But he controls everything. And so it's like this is the tactic of these offshore companies is like you put these guys basically, a lot of these people backed Sam with the highest endorsements. And so if you're just an average person, you're thinking, well, how much more due diligence can I do than all these other guys?
I really enjoyed you catching him on Twitter Spaces. I really enjoyed that. I listened to that whole thing because before that, you have this guy who's this,
is buying both, lying about it so that you can get all the good press of like caring about all these social issues while also not caring at all.
It's amazing that things with this amount of money can get this far sideways before anyone knows what's going on.
This is the problem with offshore accounts and stuff. He launches Alameda Research first, which is just like this trading firm, which basically the idea here is we have some ideas, we're going to raise a little bit of money, and we're going to do stuff. You're just having to trust these shady offshore